fully you know. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming along. A smaller group today. So we've been running these now for close to, well, this is the fourth one this month. So we'll probably have a smaller group, which is always nice actually, to have a smaller group. So, we'll probably make it just really, really informal today. We'll give everybody a few more minutes. Journos tend to stumble in at the very last minute, so we'll give everyone a few more minutes before we get started, maybe one or two. We might as well start, given that it's quite a small group. We might as well kind of go around the grounds and just get you guys to introduce yourselves, where you are, where you're from, and what you do, I guess. Starting, I guess, with the wonderful Corinne Podger.
Oh dear. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm a media development consultant, so I'm a recovering journalist, occasionally still commit acts of journalism. Since 2013, I've been working in the media development sector, doing training with reporters, mostly in developing country settings. And I'm based just outside of Sydney. Pre-COVID, I had a great big carbon footprint, and now I don't. That's basically it. Yep.
Thanks, Corinne. Sean Power, if you're still there.
Yes, g'day. So yeah, my name's Sean, and I probably spent the last 10 years working across TV and radio, most recently at Channel 9, working for 60 Minutes, but I made the jump to a government comms role in transport infrastructure, would you believe? But I'm interested in the audience-led strategy through the lens of we have great stories to tell, that we want to build up our own sort of news platform internally from all the development stuff we're doing. So just trying to think about different ways to do that. Historically, it's really just been pretty ad hoc and with this sort of appetite that whatever they can get out through earned media, rather than building up their own channels and trying to create a real sort of niche space for people who do love big, large-scale infrastructure projects. So just going to have a listen in and see where that takes me.
Mate, as somebody that bought a house at the end of the West Connects and has a farm in country New South Wales, I love infrastructure projects too. And yeah, so I'll have to subscribe to whatever you're putting out. Mate, thank you for joining us. There have been a variety of kind of people joining us throughout the month. So we've had the editor of a horse website in Washington State. We've had a farmer from the Kapiti Valley, one of my neighbours, who decided to jump on. We've had all sorts. So it's there's certainly something for everyone. So great to have you here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, mate. Geronimo, next up with you.
Oh, everyone calls me JD, by the way, so it's a lot shorter than
JD. Geronimo De Leon and Sean Power, two of the most wonderful names I think I've ever heard. It's so good. JD.
Yeah. I currently work at, actually I used to be at News Corp in Sydney, but I currently work at Bloomberg here in New York. But I actually also run a community around artificial intelligence, and it's create content around the artificial intelligence space, trying to educate people in a simpler way rather than the technical way.
Amazing. And that's fascinating. So what does that look like? What does that community look like?
Yeah, it's a website called Welcome.ai. We've got about 22,000 subscribers to the newsletter, and the social following is over around close to 90,000.
What's the website again? I'm just going to drop it into the chat for you.
Welcome.ai.
Welcome.ai. Oh yeah, I know this one.
Yeah, it needs work, but I've been focusing on trying to really hone the content side of things.
Amazing. Well, look, if I'm in a hotel room in Adelaide, so if things turn south, I feel like I'm pretty confident that you'd be able to take over the session. So, so we'll bear that in mind. Mate, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, Peter Bodkin.
Hello, I'm muting myself. So I'm the editor with AAP Fact Check, which is the fact check unit for AAP, Australian National Newswire. And I suppose I'm mainly interested in kind of growing the audience for our fact checks. So we've been doing this now for a couple of years. Have had some good partnerships in the past with Google, amongst others, but kind of building all that in together to create a bigger and more established, loyal audience for what we're doing. That's one of my goals. So interested to hear anything that would help us in that objective.
Amazing. And Peter, you were previously at Storyful, the social media newswire?
I was, yes. I was with Storyful in Sydney for about a year, digging into the dark recesses of the internet, as I still do.
Wonderful. I started the Sydney Bureau. I don't know whether you know that, but yeah, it's an amazing company.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, getting a little bit smaller at the moment, it seems. But yeah, it's a good place to work. Some very unique skills that the team there has, and learn lots of interesting things.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we come at you for all of our fact check and verification questions as we move through the session.
Oh, God, don't ask me too much. I might embarrass myself, but sure, give it a try.
Oh, no doubt you'll be able to sort it out. Mate, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Ben Clark, we'll go to you next.
Good day, everyone. How's it going? So I am the Deputy Engagement Editor at The Conversation Australia. So broadly, my remit, well, up until now, I was mostly doing our social media along with Tess, who's just jumped into the call as well. So we were sort of sharing that. Tess is sort of taking over the socials more so. And I'm looking at different sort of creative ways that we can engage our audience. We're pretty good at getting people to come to the site. But we're looking at, getting people to sort of engage in like a two-way dialogue between our experts from universities and our journalists, and giving the audience sort of more ways to engage with our content and sort of have a deeper sort of connection to what we do. So yeah, that's broadly sort of my remit. So that's creating some content and sort of pushing that out on socials to try and get people to engage and highlighting, showcasing when we get good engagement from our readers. So yeah, that's sort of my remit. And yeah.
Awesome, mate. What a cool gig.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it.
Mate, thank you so much. And next up we'll have Arcana. I really hope I got that right. Is it close?
It's Archana, but yeah, you can call me Archie.
Archana. Yeah, that's a 1 out of 10. That's not even, my apologies.
It's okay. Yeah, I go off Archie just because it's easier for everyone. But I'm actually a Googler, so I work on the ad manager or ad serving side of the business. So we help news publishers and other like e-commerce sites monetize their inventory through advertising. And the vertical that I look after is news publishers. So this topic is very top of mind for my clients. So I'm here to just learn a bit more about how they should be thinking about audience strategy beyond ads. So yeah, interested to hear.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I feel like you're the Google equivalent of a secret shopper. I'm going to be marked at the end of this. Mate, thank you so much for joining us. I think there'll be lots of questions for you as we kind of move through the session as well.
Cool, thank you.
No worries. Fiona.
Yeah,
hello.
Hi Neil, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can, perfectly.
Terrific. Okay, so I am a lecturer in online journalism at Sydney University. I research social media, and I'm a founding member of the Australian Community Managers Network. So they're the sort of people who look after the moderation and management of all the communities, all of the audiences, I suppose, that you're working with. Yeah, so I'm kind of interested in passing stuff along to students, but also to speak with the ACM and make sure that people are engaging professional community managers.
Absolutely. And you guys have an amazing Facebook group as well, don't you?
We have a few.
Are you running that?
No, I don't. That's Adriana and Lauren, but we have a huge alumni Facebook group that is terrific. Oh, and you're talking about ACM Facebook. Yeah, no. Vanessa Paik runs that, and it is absolutely fabulous. So I recommend it for everyone who's on the call. We had a great live stream the other day in the wake of the Facebook ban. So it was all really useful for people thinking about diversifying their strategy beyond Facebook.
Amazing. I'm going to drop a link in as well. Well, I think this is the right one. It is honestly an incredible group. The expertise in that group is extraordinary. There's another one as well while we're doing Facebook groups. And when we get started, when we first started the bit of a whip around the world, there were only a handful of people, so it has kind of ballooned out of control. But I will put a link in. There's also a couple of journalism Facebook pages as well, and I'm sure Corinne knows those as well. So we'll pop those in as we go. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us. And is that it? Have we got everybody? I think we have. All right. Let's rock and roll. Okay. As I mentioned, we'll make this really informal today. It's a great tiny little group, so we'll keep it super casual. So feel free to jump in at any point and ask me any questions that you have. Really happy to take them as we go. So hopefully you're able to see those slides now. Please shout out if not. Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered today. From where I'm sitting, that is Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Just as a little bit of a background, I work as part of the Google News Initiative. G&I is Google's effort to build a stronger future for journalism. My role focuses on the first of the 3 E's, which is to elevate and strengthen quality journalism. The other areas of the G&I are evolving business models through programs such as Subscribe with Google and empowering news organizations through tech innovation. That final bit is mainly achieved through the development of tools for journalists, but there are a few things coming down the pipe all the time. And there's also been a number of announcements recently and some new tools that I'm going to take you guys through today. In order to keep journalists up to date, we have this website as well, which is g.co/news training. This is where you'll find all the latest tools for finding and telling news stories on this website. The site also allows you to basically learn at your own pace and covers all elements of digital journalism, from verification to advanced search to satellite mapping. It's amazing. We also have a teaching fellow who can take you through the basics over video. Former AAP editorial trainer Miguel D'Souza is part of the team. Unfortunately, he can't join us today. He's doing a session with the ABC at the moment, but he's available to do those fundamental digital tools as well. And I'm happy to do this session for anyone as well. So there's a bunch of training that I'll be rolling out over the next couple of months that I'm able to do for you, either for your newsroom or as part of a larger session like this one. So there's an enormously embarrassing headshot. There we are, big one. Kind of look a little bit like a dragon or something with that hair. But my role at Google is unique. It's a 12-month fellowship with a very clear goal. My role is to help local, regional, and small publishers build stronger businesses through training and support. I got my first experience of journalism at my local newspaper, the mighty Lithgow Mercury, age 15. And the first 2 years of my career were spent serving local communities as a reporter. And at the moment, as I mentioned, I'm down in Adelaide. I'm heading off on my first trip in this role. I've been in this role for 6 months. But first time I've been able to get on a plane, and I'll be down at the Country Press Association of South Australia's conference tomorrow in the beautiful Clare Valley. So most recently, I led News Corp's shift to digital by building a national training program for newsrooms. We trained 1,000 journalists in social, search, and mobile video, and very happy to talk about any of that stuff today. I also taught journalists and editors how to maximize readership and revenue. And that's a big part of also what I'm doing at Google as well. Just basically talking to editors about how they can have more readers and make more money. I also launched a social news startup Storeful in Australia. Chatted a little bit about this at the start with Peter, but it's a first of its kind service providing publishers and brands with social media content to use in their storytelling. Also heavily into verification, obviously, as well, which is something that is absolutely crucial right now. Previous to that, I was head of social media at the ABC, leading the business through a period of fairly dramatic change. And I'm currently a sessional lecturer at UTS in Sydney as well. And just finally, I have a cattle farm in country New South Wales and a 14-month-old daughter called Molly. Don't ask me about either of those two things, or we'll get absolutely nothing else done. So just before we go any further, there is a new feature in Google Meet. There's a Q&A feature, but probably most people tend to use the chat. So feel free to ask questions as we go. As I'm chatting, it's a little bit hard for me to see those questions. So please, jump up and jump in and sort of interrupt me as well. I'm really happy to be interrupted. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so it's constantly being interrupted. After this as well, you'll get access to this full recording. Every single slide from the session will also hit your inbox as well, including notes, so that you don't have to worry too much about taking notes as we go. I'm also going to send through a very short survey. This basically helps us improve, so we'd love to hear what you thought of the session as well. Okay, so kind of finished all the public service announcements. We'll kind of move into the content now. So I guess one of the fundamental differences between sort of print and digital publishing is the deeper understanding that you can get from digital in understanding who your audience is, and also how they behave. So I do a lot of training with newspaper groups, and what I like to say to them is that you sort of imagine that you think you're standing over the shoulder of your readers as they're flipping through the newspaper. We've all done it. If you've ever worked from a newspaper and you've been on public transport, you're always waiting to see if they step on your byline. So you can watch how much time they spend on every single page. You can see how much time they're spending on every single story in digital, how much engagement they've got with every picture, every ad. It's really kind of a deep experience in understanding your audience. So I'm going to take you through a bunch of analytics tools today. These things are very Google focused. I have a tendency towards the best tools, and Google does make the best tools in a lot of these cases, but these concepts apply to any analytics tool that you might use. My farm website has an amazing inbuilt analytics web system, which is pulling in on the same sorts of theories that we're going to talk about today. So basically, what the analytics means for you as journalists and publishers and product and salespeople is that it allows you to use this data to create more engaging stories, build better digital products, and also tell more compelling stories to advertisers to make them spend more money. So that's the goal here, is to build better businesses through data, and this starts and ends with the audience. So this guy here is Justin. He's the Director of Education at Google and a certified data nerd. Always looks pretty great in that jacket. Sort of reminds me of the Fonz from Happy Days. Probably a bit older than some of you guys. So when I was starting Storeful, we had one goal, and that was to increase the number of journalists using our newswire. I thought that if I could increase the number of users, it would deepen engagement with our business and success would flow from there, and it did. We doubled the amount of Australian users in the first 90 days, which started a process to us posting $1 million of revenue in our first year. Justin looks at web analytics like this. The only goal of web analytics is to increase our business outcomes. So before we go any further, I want you all to write down one goal or one target for your publication or for you over the next 12 months. It doesn't necessarily need to be from your patch. It could be looking at the business as a whole. It could be something as simple as, I'd love to start and grow a newsletter. I'd like to increase traffic with younger audiences, or I want to improve how our video products are performing. So just pop that down, and hopefully we'll be able to find a data tool for you today. So Justin goes on to say, web analytics help us understand our audience and their needs, and also help us make better online experiences for them. Love that. Now, depending on what you all wrote down, that might mean that we want to drive more subscriptions, and analytics will enable us to focus on what will make people subscribe. This is increasingly where publishers are going, and there's a lot of research to support an increased willingness to pay. And this is particularly true of small publishers and local publishers as well. There was a great piece of research that was done by the University of Canberra last year, supported by Google, I should add. This is the team that's also behind the Digital News Report, which is released in partnership with the Reuters Institute at Oxford University each year. They did two particular research pieces that I'll send through after the call, and they showed an increased willingness to pay when it came to local news in particular, which is super exciting, I think, at this particular point in history. And often that's something that comes up in these kinds of sessions, is like, I'm currently a free newspaper, how can I get people to pay in digital? Well, the research is certainly there. But it is more than getting people to click on an article. I think most of us on this session have developed the dark arts of getting people to click on news articles and content online. Getting someone to subscribe is a bit more than that. It's getting them to hand over their money, which is a whole different ballgame. So you need to be incredibly attuned to where they see value in what you do. Before we go on, are there any questions that have come up so far? Any observations? Nope. Everyone's still here, which is always a good sign. Okay. So let's get into the tools now. So as I mentioned, this stuff really applies to any analytics system. If you're using the wonderful people at Mediality, which is formerly AAP Studio, they have their own. As I mentioned, my farm blog has a Squarespace analytics system. All of this stuff is basically included in it. But I will speak to Google Analytics today because it's free, and they're helping pay for my coffee. So so we will talk about Google Analytics today. So quite simply, it's a free tracking tool that shows you how visitors visit your website and what they do once they're there. So to take a completely random example, imagine that you're an e-commerce store and you want to see how many users visit your website. With Google Analytics, you can see the number of visitors to your online store, where they're coming from, which device they're using, and much more. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is a typical view of the analytics dashboard. You can see your total sessions, how many pages per session, how many of these were new sessions. I'm getting session overload already. Average session duration, and also the total number of users and page views. You can also see how many of these are new users versus returning users. New users are important, but I guess what I learned at my time at News Corp was that returning visitors are the most valuable. In our experience, they stay longer on average, and they're also more likely to engage with other products and services. So basically, what that means, if you're running a subscription website and they're accessing free links, they're not a subscriber themselves, they are more likely to subscribe the more times they come back. And as a subscriber, they're more likely to stay longer on your website. They're more likely to visit other websites that you have. It's it's a much more kind of deeper engagement. So we always paid a lot of attention to returning visitors. On that, just from an acquisition perspective, it's a lot more expensive to attract a new customer than it is to retain existing customers. So it's good from a business sense as well. Should probably point out as well at this point the much demonized bounce rate. It's definitely worth clarifying. It's the percentage of single session visits. That's all it means. It's not necessarily a bad thing. This could flag a few things. It might mean that they were able to find what they needed right away, which is a good thing. So you need to be really careful about how you interpret bounce rate. I'll also provide a full summary after this session as well, so that you have every single term that I've mentioned, so that you don't have to kind of, remember what all the different sessions means if this stuff is already swimming around in your head. So this guy here is Peter Twobeard, as I call him. But Google Analytics basically allows you to understand more specific things about your users, including this guy. You won't know his name, but you can tell what device he used to access your website. You can also see what he clicked on when he came to your website. So, for example, Peter came from Facebook. Peter obviously comes from the future because there's no news on Facebook right now, but that's what you can learn. As I mentioned, analytics won't give you personally identifiable information. You can't learn specifically who is coming to your website, but you can get aggregated and anonymous information like, say, for instance, demographics, age, location. So one example of how we used this data at the ABC was in prioritizing the rollout of our mobile optimized pages. This wasn't that long ago. I think I was at the ABC 8 years ago, and there was still no mobile optimized websites at the ABC. What we saw by looking at analytics was that, and this was an in-house system. This wasn't GA, but we could see that around 30% of our news visits were coming from mobile devices. So around 30% for ABC News, which was the highest across the board, apart from Triple J, which was around about 50% at that point, which was extraordinarily high, but as you would expect from a youth audience. So what we decided to do was basically start with the audience that was persistent and the largest audience. So we updated those ABC News pages first, so that they became mobile optimized, serving the largest audience, and then working backwards from there. So it's kind of amazing how many different ways you can cut data and what you can do and learn from it. GA also gives you real-time information on when your users are visiting your site. So you can look at things like time of day, days of the week, seasonality like Anzac Day, public holidays, Christmas Day. I've been that guy that's updating the website on his own on Christmas Day. Sure, many of you have. You could use this data on Christmas Day, for example, to decide what rostering is required, so that if, like me, you're sitting there at 2 o'clock and there's absolutely no traffic to the website, the web editor can probably roll over the hero image and go home for a late lunch with their family. So it can really be used in a variety of different ways, just even simplify things like rostering and the like. This is probably my favorite part of the tool, I have to say, as you can understand when your audience is consuming your content across the day. So this is the kind of data that you can use to make decisions to when staff start, if you're running a team, or when you roll over various parts of the website. For instance, you might have a spike first thing in the morning, not much traffic through the morning, and then another spike around about now when people are having their lunch in front of their computers. And then as we return to the workforce, you'll have spikes in the afternoon, I imagine, as people are commuting, and then the final thing at night as people are checking what's going on before they go to bed. So this is really, really powerful for looking at that content across the day. You can also make decisions about when you promote your stories as well. So if you are trying to get consistency across the day, maybe you send a newsletter out in that lull in the middle of the morning commute and the first tap of the desk at work, just to try and boost your numbers through that low period and get people back onto the website. As I sit here in Adelaide, we did a little project with the wonderful team at the Adelaide Advertiser when I was at News. We realised through the analytics that the audience was rushing to the website first thing in the morning, and our staffing of the website didn't really meet that audience. So we had a one editor from the web team coming in, I think at like 8:30 in the morning, and generally the most senior journalist, like one of the most senior journalists, the chief of staff, who's kind of quarterbacking the coverage, as they would say in the US, was starting at like 9:30. So we've got an audience that's kind of starting to spike around 6 a.m. and we've got news that's probably 12 hours old at this point. So what we did is we brought in a senior journalist, reluctantly, I must add, from their point of view. We brought them forward from 9:30 till 5. And then we also brought in more members of that web team at that point as well. So by 6 a.m., the website was completely fresh and up to date and had all of the latest news, and we're there to kind of meet the expectations of that audience. What we also found, I guess, through that change was that it gave the paper product, the print product, a massive kick through. So if you think that basically the guy who's assigning stories is starting at 9:30, it's kind of 10 o'clock before anything's really happening. If that person's now starting at 5, the phones are starting to, and Sean would know this from his time in breakfast radio, that the phone calls are starting before anyone's out of bed. So the print product really got a massive, massive push as well. They were hours ahead of where they used to be, and therefore hours ahead of their competition. So it can really help you in terms of rostering as well.
It's never fun waking anyone up, Neil.
What's that, buddy?
It's never fun waking someone up in breakfast radio.
I cannot imagine. Minister, I know it's early. Can I just talk to you about this? Sean's probably the earliest starter, I think, of the entire group, but has anybody got any stories of how they've used analytics in a creative way other than just understanding their audience, maybe on rostering or anything that you could share? No, there we go. All right, I'll continue telling my stories. Beautiful. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's go back to Peter. No, we're not going to go to Peter just yet. So you can also look at geographic information as well. So recently we did a little project at Google with 40 South, which is an amazing publication down in Tasmania. So 40 South is a quarterly magazine focused around kind of arts and culture, and they wanted to see if they could shift into digital. And we're reluctant, I think it's fair to say, at the start, and weren't quite sure whether there was going to be an audience there, and fortunately there was. But one of the great discoveries was that the audience, a lot of the audience, almost half the audience, was outside of Tassie. So for a lot of time, they thought that they were speaking to Tasmanians, and also the occasional person that's, kind of visiting from another state and is maybe trying to find something unique that they can go and do that's not on the tourist trail. But there was a lot of Tasmanian expats that they were picking up through this data. So what they're now doing is thinking about how they can then serve that audience. So half of their audience is not in Tassie. They can see exactly where they are. So big audience in the US, big audience in the UK, big audience on mainland Australia. But so how do they serve them? So is it a newsletter that goes once a week that tells them all of the interesting things that have happened in Tasmania across the week? Is it publishing within their time zones? So should they start publishing on social media at 2 a.m. in the morning while everyone's asleep here, but there is an audience waiting for them overseas? And that's something that I've found on my own social media as well. I measure all of my social content as well. I'm obsessed with data. And what I've found is that 2 a.m. is the sweet spot for me, which is bizarre. So most of that is coming from US traffic. So when I'm scheduling a post to go out at 2 a.m., I'm starting to think about, is it a big story that bubbled up in news and tech across the day here in Australia? Is it a wacky, weird, and wonderful animal yarn, which the Americans, UK audiences love? So geographic data can really help you deeply understand your audience and potentially reach them in a new way. Yeah, I would love to see the guys down there do a paid email to some of these guys. I think that would be pretty cool and would do pretty well. I'm conscious that this is already probably information overload if some of this stuff is new to you or you haven't used it in a little while. So just a reminder that I will send through the full video after this call. I'll send through every slide. I'll send through notes as well, and I'll also send through a glossary of terms so that you're fully across everything, so that we don't leave you behind. You can also email me as well. It's worth stating as well. So neilvarcoe@google.com, and I'll flash that up on the screen at the end. So this is the final thing that I will say about numbers. I do understand that some journalists find numbers a bit hard, so myself included. So I will kind of move on in a second, but I guess GA allows you to answer these kinds of questions as you're looking at the what up here on the screen. So what do they click on? Where do they come from? What are they doing when they arrive? How long are they staying, which is an important one, as we mentioned. And also, you can learn where they go to next. Not many people know that, but you can learn where they go to next, which is kind of helpful on occasion. And I'm pretty proud of myself. This is only the second animated GIF that I've done. Normally, they come thick and fast during these sessions. So, yeah, looks a little bit like Sean Power, must be said. So basically what this allows you to do is figure out what they're doing on your website and answer a few more questions like these. So which article thumbnails generate the most clicks? What style of imagery resonates with particular demographics? Which headlines increase your click-through rates? And that's a big one as well. Which headlines increase your click-through rates? Here he is, old Peter Twobeards, he's back. So basically what this means in tech jargon is this organization has really succeeded in targeting me as an archetypal visitor to their website. Quickly translated, that means these people understand me. And that's certainly what we're trying to do with analytics, is to understand the audience. Everything comes from that. As I mentioned, when I first started in roles where numbers became a big part of what I do, I had a little bit of trouble getting my head around data versus insights. I would send these enormous reports with every single number that I could get my hands on. And I think my executives were just kind of reading these emails and going, I don't know, he seems to be doing things, but I'm not quite sure what this is telling me. So I just thought it was worthwhile very quickly going through what is the difference, or how I see data versus insight. So I look at it this way. I see data as new information, and I see insights as how you can act on it. So data is new information, and insights are how you can act on it. So it's really, really important, I think, when you're thinking about as you're doing the conversation, starting to let people know what's working, what's not, and starting to show the value of what you're doing. it's really important that you also start to think about what are the insights in that information. 10% increase week on week is fantastic. Also, is there anything else in there that we can see? Maybe they're leaning heavily into lifestyle content. So, or with the conversation, I love the dingo content. Some great dingo yarns of the conversation. I love the one a couple of weeks ago about the different coloured dingoes. Obsessed with dingoes. Do more dingo content is the general point. So you might be able to find an
dingo content. I would, but no, probably not.
Is it not right? Well, it doesn't go well with dingo content.
No, it rates well. No, it's good. I just you can't steer too heavily into the dingo niche. You need to broaden out a bit.
You know what? That is such a good point. I started out in online on a website called livenews.com.au. It lasted 7 months. It was based in Radio 2GB in Sydney, and it was a great little model. We basically would repurpose the stories coming from the radio newsroom and kind of online, digify them. And I would often get a call from my editor saying, "Neil, there's a really good yarn yesterday about that two-headed snake. Do you have any more two-headed snake yarns for today?" And I just would always say to him, we can't just do a whole website full of two-headed snakes. Then we're the two-headed snake website, and people do need variety. So that's a really important point. You can't just do snake and dingo yarns. You do have to give people a varied information diet. That's a really, really good point. Okay. So now I'm going to move into some next generation tools that have been created by Google. So Google has created a number of free news industry tools, basically to help you make better data-driven decisions, and both on the business side, and also on the editorial side of the business. So these tools help you both with revenue, but also with engagement. So really, really important that we have these two tools at our disposal. Also kind of demystify in many ways what GA is. I think for a lot of people that go into GA for the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So these two tools are really designed as helpers to help you really get the most out of Google Analytics. So the two tools are called News Consumer Insights and Real-Time Content Insights. They've been kind of quiet heroes in newsrooms for a while, these two, but they've recently been re-released in the past couple of months with a new resource which is called the News Tagging Guide. Consumer Insights basically gives publishers, very dusty hotel room here in Adelaide. So Consumer Insights gives publishers recommendations on how to grow reader revenue and reader engagement. So that's both of those things are inside Consumer Insights. Content Insights helps you understand how your content is performing in real time, and also what topics are trending on the broader web. So why that second tool is really, really important is it shows you what's happening on your own website with the content, hopefully dingo yarns, but also maybe there's a story out there that's starting to trend online that you're not covering. So it brings in those two things. So what you have and potentially what you're missing. Really, really, really powerful tool. What I really love about News Consumer Insights, one of the features I really love is that it allows you to create a dashboard, which is a simple visualization of how your content is performing and also the missing bit, the potential missing bit. So helpful for newsrooms. Basically allows you to throw this up on a screen and have it there effectively as a bit of a early warning system for news. So you can see what's bubbling up and also what of your content is starting to trend and starting to do really well as well with your audience. News tagging tool is the new addition to the fam. It basically is a diagnostic tool that allows you to identify what audience metrics might be missing from your website. So what is the data that you're potentially not capturing? So maybe you haven't included a particular tag that's really going to create some insights that are going to be helpful for you. So it tells you all of those sorts of things. So here is a link to the website so you can check it out. You do have to have GA in order to be able to use these tools, I should say. So if you go to goo.gle/data tools, always have trouble saying that without laughing. I don't know why. Goo.gle/data tools, and you can get access to all three of these tools and run them through your website and see what you can learn. Now, I do recommend that you play around with them as they are designed to kind of work together, and they do work really well together. However, I just wanted to quickly show you what Consumer Insights looks like. When I first saw this tool, it absolutely blew my mind, and it just made me think that I just really wish that I had this back, 5-10 years ago when I first started to work closely with data in newsrooms, because it makes the job so much easier. So it's got a built-in decision engine that focuses on how to grow engagement and revenue, as I mentioned. But it also does show you those gaps really well. So it basically says you need to add this tag here. These are some things that will increase engagement. These are things that you can do to help with revenue. Have you thought about starting a newsletter? All of these sorts of things will be included in there. It's a magical mystery machine. What it also does really well and quite simply is audience segmentation. You would have certainly come across that at some point. So what it does for you is basically creates the audience within the audience and shows you all of those things, or some of those things that I spoke about earlier around your most engaged audience. Who are your advocates? Who are the casual readers that you need to bring along? And so it allows you to start to do very simply audience segmentation, which can be a difficult thing to do. So just log in using your GA account details and check it out. Check all of them out. They're amazing. So just a little bit of time on this before we wrap, because this is we start to wrap. This is the new tool. This is the news tagging guide. This is what it looks like. It does require a little bit of knowledge to use it. So it's got a deep playbook with it. So it does show you exactly how to do it. So there is that support there. But if you did need more support with it, there is a Google partner that I can put you in touch with as well that will basically do this work for you as well. And they're not super. It's not as expensive as you would think. So we obviously don't get paid for any of that, but there are certainly the Google partners that we can put you in touch with that are really great at making sure that your website is marked up the way that it should be. And is performing the way it should be. And they can also do things like setting up automated reports, which we haven't really gone into in too much detail, but you can get automated reports that will hit you and even your boss whenever you like. Maybe once a week's a good rhythm that basically shows you exactly what's happening on your website without you even having to go in and create those reports. So that's another thing that you can certainly do with GA. Next up, we're going to look at a bit of a case study of how of a little publisher that's used GA really well. Before we do that, I just wanted to throw it back to you guys and see if there are any questions. Corinne, thank you so much for dropping all of those amazing Facebook groups in there. Matt Navarra is social media to me. He's amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. Are there any questions before we go into the case study?
Is there a breakdown of how that Consumer Insights app works? Because I'm guessing, is that just a whole bunch of queries? Is that I'm guessing that's all that data is you're primarily able to do via Google Analytics already, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's such a good question. It basically runs a layer over the top of GA,
Right.
and using machine learning and AI, which you're well across, it makes recommendations on things that you should do. So yeah, it basically, all of that information is already contained within your GA dashboard, but it just lifts it up and makes it obvious to you so that you don't have to kind of dig through it.
Okay. No, it looks really cool. I'm actually already playing with it.
Awesome. And if you do have questions, JD or anybody else, I'm really happy to put you in touch with Antal Diaz, who's the head of that, all three of those tools. And he also leads Google surveys as well. So if you have any questions or you'd like to talk to him, I'm really happy to connect you on email so that you can talk to him directly about that stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Neil.
No worries. Do you have any more questions? I'm used to Sydney time, and Adelaide, we're 30 minutes behind. So I just looked at the clock and I was like, "What? I've got 30 minutes to go. How's that even possible?" So we do have 6 minutes left in this session, but I will give you guys plenty of time at the end as well to chat. I just really want to take you through this case study as well, just as we start to wrap up. So this is some work that we did very recently with McPherson Media Group, and they're an amazing local publishing group. And I just think it does a really good job of sort of explaining what what you can do with analytics. So we partnered with McPherson Media Group and Data Runs Deep, which is one of those partner organizations that I can recommend to you. And it was pretty amazing, I think, what we were able to sort of achieve with them. These guys hadn't really used analytics deeply, it's fair to say, before we started to work on this stuff with them, but had some some pretty big results. And as you can see, even just from a product or from a staff and resources perspective, they had a 75% reduction in time required to implement tracking of core tracking for GNI reporting, which you can tell that was written by one of my friends who's a developer. So basically, we were able to sort of help them get the tracking in place a lot faster than they were able to do it themselves. Is the translation there? 95% reduction in the time required to generate weekly reports by setting up automated reporting. 95%. And as somebody that spent so much time, honestly, writing reports that I fear that no one reads, it's just music to my ears. So why that's really great is because it just really takes that time back, which is something that I'm always focused on with these sorts of sessions. Like, how can we give you some time back in the day? And setting up automated reporting is such a quick win in terms of getting much more time back in your day. And if you're just setting it up for the first time and you're not quite sure what it's going to look like, you can send tests yourself, but you might just get the report sent to you and then check it over, maybe add some commentary around it, and then forward it on from there. So that takes 5 minutes versus hours and hours. So there you go. So just a quick recap before we take any more questions or comments that you guys have. So this is what we've basically learned today, hopefully. The audience is our central focus. Success grows from how well we serve them. Analytics helps us to understand our audience and their needs, and this allows us to serve them better. Data is information. Insights is information that you can act on. My brain's misfiring. And this is just, I don't know, it's a rallying cry. I've kind of been in environments where often the smartest person in the room is sometimes, maybe the youngest person in the room. And this kind of goes back to my time at the ABC, where often we would have somebody that may be 24 years old and might be straight out of uni, but they're an absolute expert at social media. So it's so critical that we really understand our audiences. So this is just a plea from me to you to make sure that you raise your voice and talk about what's happening with your audience, and let those other executives and decision makers in your business know what's happening with your audience. That's certainly something I learned at my time at the ABC. I had to do the work, but I also had to tell people about the work, and make sure that they knew what we were doing and what was happening with our audiences and where we needed to put our time. And yeah, it's just a rallying cry from me to you. So that's it from me. Only 3 animated GIFs. I feel like I did quite well. Neil Varcoe at google.com is my email. You can also ping me on all social media platforms except TikTok. I'm not on TikTok yet. Might happen this weekend. Don't know. But yeah, I'm Neil Wrights on social. You can also visit g.co/news training for all of those on-demand resources. And please reach out to me if you want some training for your newsroom. Even if you're not really sure what we do, which is understandable, feel free to email me, and I'll send through a training menu that allows you to pick and choose the sorts of things that we can do with you. Guys, thank you again for your time. I will stop presenting. Thanks, Corinne. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we release you back into the wild?
No, this is great.
Oh, go JD, sorry. Especially if it's a compliment. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just mentioning that this is great. My goal at the start was to better identify the audience to help shape the content and get more to get more value out of it. So this was primarily exactly hit the nail on the head there. So.
Awesome. What about everybody else? Did you get what you needed, or do you still have any questions?
I think that covered me pretty well, Neil. Thanks for taking us through all that. It was very helpful.
Yeah,
thank you, mate. Sorry, Fiona.
Oh, I've got dozens more questions, but I'm going to ask you to come and talk to our students, eh?
Oh, I'd love to. Love to.
Fantastic. I'll get in touch with you shortly.
That'd be great.
I really enjoyed it, as always, Neil. I know it can feel really discombobulating when you're just addressing a room full of names where everyone's got their mics and video off. So just to say, I was paying lots of attention and making lots of notes. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I think I'm on. I've got a toddler, as you know, and probably haven't had enough coffee today. So it's hard to know what I said over the last hour.
No, it was super helpful. I'm doing a lot of online training as well, and I just wanted to say it's really helpful, even though it's not terribly chatty. And you do a great job of this stuff, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming along.
Cool. Thanks, Neil. Right. I might actually ping you separately, because that News Consumer Insights is something we've just been introduced to, but we don't have too much details on it. So I'll reach out to you separately.
Awesome. Love to talk about it. It's like one of my favorites.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Neil. That was really helpful. Yeah, I was pretty, across a lot of the sort of basics of analytics, but yeah, that consumer insights and stuff I just had no knowledge of. So it's really good to know. Cheers.
Awesome, mate. And if you want us to do a session unrelated to Dingo content at the conversation, let me know. I'd love to do something with you guys.
Yeah.